The jet hummed beneath Marshall Green's Italian leather shoes as he stared out the first-class window, his mind miles from the sky. 38,000 feet above Georgia, champagne in hand, everything around him gleamed. The silver trim, the tailored suit he wore, the digital tablet blinking with real estate projections for his latest Savannah development. Every angle of his life was polished, manicured, designed to impress. But beneath the shine, there was silence. "Mr. Green, would you care for more champagne?" Her voice stopped him cold, soft, familiar. Like a note from a song he thought he'd forgotten. He turned, and there she was. The flight attendant, polished hair in a low twist, pressed navy uniform, calm confidence. Her smile was warm, professional, and unmistakably hers. Claire, his ex-wife, had vanished from his life a decade ago, back when he traded love for ambition. But now, here, 3D, undeniable, she stood beside him offering champagne like she hadn't once shared his last name. Marshall blinked. Sorry, what did you say?" "I asked if you wanted more champagne, sir," she replied, her tone even. Her eyes held him a moment too long. A twitch of recognition, or just customer service. He nodded slowly. "Yes, please." She poured, gave a polite smile, and moved on down the aisle, but he couldn't breathe. Marshall leaned back in his seat, his fingers tightening around the flute. Claire. It wasn't possible. The last he heard, she had left Atlanta for the West Coast. He hadn't dared to track her after the divorce. Something about pride, about finality. She was supposed to be a closed chapter, and yet... He turned to glance again. She was helping an elderly woman with her seatbelt, her hands steady, her smile soft. His pulse was thunder in his ears. The plane began its descent into Savannah. Outside the window, the Georgia coastline rolled beneath them, sleepy marshland dotted with docked shrimp boats and faded rooftops. Inside him, something ancient stirred. The black SUV waiting outside the airport was part of Marshall's usual protocol. Professionalism. Status. His assistant had arranged it with a few keystrokes. His luggage was packed by someone else. His schedule, boardroom meetings, press walkthroughs, ribbon cuttings, all programmed in. But Marshall didn't get in the car. He watched as passengers trickled out of the terminal. Then he saw her, Claire, stepping into the curbside light, suitcase in tow. Her name badge glinting under the street lamp. C. Whitmore, Whitmore. She hadn't changed it. She didn't see him. Or if she did, she didn't show it. She walked toward the employee shuttle stop near the parking garage. Quiet, unnoticed. Not glamorous, not escorted. Marshall stood frozen. His driver rolled down the window. "Mr. Green? Give me a moment." He followed her, slowly, keeping distance. The SUV idled behind him, confused. Claire stepped onto a modest shuttle, mostly filled with crew members in uniform. She sat in the back, alone. Marshall didn't board. He watched the shuttle doors close, watched her fade behind the fogged glass. A quiet ache bloomed in his chest. What was she doing here? What had her life become? And why, after all these years, was she still wearing his last name? By the time he checked into his penthouse suite overlooking Forsyth Park, the questions had turned into an obsession. His assistant, Kendra, knocked and entered with the week's itinerary. "You good with the mayor's breakfast tomorrow and the press at 10?" she asked, flipping through her tablet. "Also, Tucker wants a walkthrough of the Liberty Row units before the investors fly in." Marshall didn't respond. He was still staring out the window, jaw tight. "Marshall?" she said again. "Push the meetings," he muttered. "Excuse me? Move everything by 2 days. Say I had a delay. Tell Tucker I'll walk the site alone." Kendra blinked. "You okay?" He turned. "Just get it done." She hesitated, then nodded and left the suite. Marshall pulled his phone out and searched her name. Claire Whitmore. But there were no new photos, no social profiles, no recent mentions. She was a ghost. Until now. He scrolled absently, then paused. A diner. Whitmore's Diner. Low-rated Google listing. Local business. Owner, C. Whitmore. He zoomed in. The address was 5 blocks from the airport. The next morning he stood across the street from the small 2-windowed corner diner. White paint chipped off the edges. The sign hung a little crooked, but inside, there she was, Claire, wearing a soft blue apron, her hair now loose around her shoulders, laughing with a man in a mechanic's jacket, tall, clean-cut, mid-40s, her husband. She turned toward the back, and then a small girl came out carrying 2 glasses of water. She couldn't be older than 9. The man helped the girl up onto a stool. She smiled at him, then at Claire. That smile, it was wide and honest. But what stopped Marshall cold was the dark crescent birthmark on the child's right temple. His fingers went numb. That mark. Claire had one just like it. It was how he used to trace her cheek in the dark. Now it was on a child's face. Marshall stepped back. His chest tightened. He turned and walked quickly down the block, breath ragged, heart racing. No, it couldn't be. But the question buried itself deep in his chest like a hook. What if it was true? What if she had been pregnant when she left? What if that girl was his? He stopped near the park, pressing a hand to his chest. The sun was rising through Spanish moss, casting long golden streaks across the brick paths. All his power, his empire, his perfect image. None of it had prepared him for this. Not for Claire. Not for the girl with his eyes, and not for the ache in his chest that whispered, "You left more behind than you knew." He didn't move for a long time, and for the first time in 10 years, Marshall Green felt completely unprepared for what came next. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought mattered to me either way. Marshall didn't remember walking back to his suite. The city seemed quieter than usual, as if Savannah itself had stepped back to give him space to process what he'd just seen. Claire, a child, a birthmark he couldn't forget, and a stranger in a mechanic's jacket who stood where he used to stand. He'd built towers, reshaped skylines, and never once stumbled, until now. That night, he barely slept. He didn't even touch the room service tray that arrived untouched and was later quietly taken away. He stood by the window until the stars disappeared, watching fog roll off the river like slow-moving regret. At 7:00 a.m., he was back at the diner. The inside was simple, worn but warm. Faded booths, mismatched mugs, soft jazz playing on a dusty speaker. The kind of place that wasn't trying to be anything more than what it was, a quiet life. Claire emerged from the kitchen, apron tied neatly, holding a pot of coffee. She stopped mid-step when she saw him. "Table for 1?" she asked, voice even, but not cold. Marshall cleared his throat. "If that's okay." She nodded, motioning to the booth by the window. "You can sit there." We opened slow. He took the seat. She approached cautiously, like she was stepping back into a memory she wasn't sure she wanted. She poured the coffee. "How long are you in town?" "A few days," he said. "Maybe longer." Claire rested the pot on the edge of the table. "Business?" He nodded. "New development project near the river." A pause. "I didn't expect to see you again," she said quietly. He met her eyes. "I didn't expect to see you on a plane." She offered a brief, almost smile. Life has a funny way of folding back on itself. He wanted to ask everything at once, about the girl, about her life, about why she never told him, but he kept his mouth shut. The moment was too fragile. "You look well," he said. "I am well," she replied. "And you?" Marshall gave a short, humorless laugh. "Wealthy, busy, restless." Claire took the coffee pot and turned away. "That sounds about right." He watched her move back behind the counter, where she began preparing plates of toast and eggs, sliding orders to a young man in the kitchen. She spoke to him with familiarity, not romance, more like long-standing teamwork. Minutes later, the bell above the door jingled. and the girl from yesterday, Ella, ran inside, backpack bouncing. Her curls were tied up in a loose ponytail, and she was humming a tune to herself. "Morning, Mama," she said, hopping up on a stool. Claire turned and smiled with a warmth Marshall hadn't seen in years. "You remembered your library book today?" Ella nodded, proudly holding it up. "I read it twice." From the back, the man in the mechanic's jacket stepped into the light. "Hey, sunshine," he said, brushing his hand gently across Ella's shoulder as he passed. "Don't forget your lunch. It's on the counter." "Thanks, Ben," Ella chirped. Marshall blinked. "Ben, Claire's husband?" Ben turned toward Marshall, catching him mid-stare. For a moment, neither man spoke. Claire noticed and stepped in quickly. "Ben, this is Marshall, an old friend from Atlanta." Ben gave a polite but reserved nod. "Nice to meet you." Marshall extended a hand, which Ben accepted with a firm, brief shake. "Appreciate you supporting our place," Ben added, then turned to help Ella with her backpack. Marshall's throat tightened. "Their place." Claire walked back over. "Ella's got school in 20, so it's kind of a rush in the mornings," he nodded. "She seems great." Claire's expression softened, but there was caution behind her eyes. "She is." Marshall hesitated, the words balancing on his tongue. "Claire, is she mine?" The question hung there, sharp as glass. Claire's lips parted, then closed again. She glanced at Ben, then at Ella, then out the window. "That's not a question I'm going to answer here," she said quietly. Marshall leaned in slightly. "You owe me the truth." "I owe Ella peace," she replied, her voice firmer now. "She's happy. That's what matters." "She has my birthmark." Claire blinked, but didn't deny it. "I need to know," he said. "Not for me, for her." Claire studied him. "If you really believe that, then don't disrupt what she knows is home." Ella hopped off the stool, her backpack already on. "Mama, can we go now? Ms. Ray said I could help in the garden before class." Claire forced a smile. "Of course, baby." "Go wait by the car. Ben'll take you in a minute." As the child ran to the door, Claire turned back to Marshall. "You showing up like this, without warning, without asking, it's not heroic, it's reckless." Marshall stood slowly, his voice low. "I'm not here to make things harder, but I can't unsee her face." Claire nodded once, emotion flickering behind her calm. "Neither can I." He opened his mouth to speak again, but she stepped away, heading toward the kitchen. Ben returned from walking Ella out, nodding to Marshall again, cordial but distant. "I don't know why you're here," Ben said calmly. "But if you care about them, don't break what's held for years." Marshall didn't respond. He stepped out into the sunlight, his coffee still untouched. Across the street, Ella climbed into a dusty SUV. Ben took the driver's seat. Claire closed the passenger door behind her daughter, then looked up, just for a second, locking eyes with Marshall. Then she turned away. Marshall stood frozen on the sidewalk. 10 years of silence had just cracked, and beneath it, everything he didn't want to feel. The rain came soft that afternoon, a southern drizzle that wrapped the streets of Savannah in quiet. Marshall stood under the awning across from the diner, hands in his coat pockets, watching through the fogged glass as Claire poured coffee for an elderly couple. She moved with ease, like she belonged there, not as a server, but as a heartbeat. She laughed at something one of the patrons said, the kind of laugh that filled a space without asking for permission. It was the same laugh that used to echo through their old loft in Atlanta, back when dreams were still tangled with bedsheets and ambition hadn't torn them in two. He hadn't meant to come back, not again, but some questions don't fade. They throb, and hers had a name, Ella. He could still see the shape of that birthmark in his mind, crescent and soft. The same one Claire had on her temple, the same curve he used to kiss without thinking. It wasn't proof, not legally, but it was enough to know. Marshall stepped out of the rain, pushed the door open, and was greeted by the warm scent of grits and cinnamon toast. The bell above the door jingled. Claire looked up. Their eyes met. For a second, something passed between them. Not recognition, not anger. Something quieter, like the hush before a thunderstorm. She set the coffee pot down and approached slowly, wiping her hands on a towel. "You're persistent." "I have questions." "You had a decade to ask them." Marshall took a seat at the same booth as before. "Back then, I thought silence was closure." Claire studied him. "And now?" He exhaled. "Now I think it was cowardice." She didn't respond, just folded the towel over her arm. "Do you want anything, or is guilt enough for breakfast?" His lips tugged upward, despite the weight. "Tea." "No sugar." She turned toward the kitchen. Marshall watched her go, the rhythm of her steps, the strength in her posture. She hadn't wilted without him. If anything, she looked more grounded, more whole. She returned minutes later with a steaming mug and slid it in front of him. "Thanks," he said quietly. Claire slid into the booth opposite, surprising him. She leaned back, arms crossed. "You want to ask? So ask." He hesitated. "Ella." "She's 9, Claire said quickly. "Loves books, hates eggs, and thinks every paper airplane has a soul." Marshall looked down at the table. "You named her Ella." "It was my grandmother's name," she said. "It also means light. Seemed appropriate." There was a pause. The rain tapped gently on the windows, like it was waiting too. "Is she mine?" he asked. Claire's jaw tensed. She looked away. "I think I already know," he added, "but I need to hear it." She blinked. Once. Twice. Then she looked at him fully, eyes damp but steady. "I was pregnant when you left," she said. "I didn't plan to keep it from you forever, but after that final conversation, the one where you said kids would chain you down, I didn't mean—" "I know what you meant," Claire said, cutting him off gently. "And I believed you. I didn't want to beg you to stay for something you didn't want." Marshall's chest tightened. The memory surfaced. Him, pacing their condo, talking about expansion, about equity, about freedom. Claire sitting silently on the edge of their bed, her hand on her stomach. "You should have told me," he whispered. "And what would you have done?" she asked, genuinely. "Dropped your investors? Stopped your 5th condo tower? Come back to be a father because of obligation?" He had no answer. She leaned forward. "Ben." He didn't ask questions. When Ella was born, he held her like she was his. He didn't need a blood test. He just loved her. Marshall's throat thickened. "Does she know?" Claire shook her head. "She thinks Ben is her father, and in every way that matters, he is." He looked away, guilt pressing hard against his ribs. "I don't want to take anything from you," he said, "or from Ben. I don't know what I want. I just know I can't unknow her." Claire looked at him for a long time. "I've spent every year teaching her that her life is safe and simple. You showing up now, it doesn't just rattle me, Marshall. It confuses her." "I don't plan to disrupt anything." "But you already have," she said, not unkindly. The door opened behind them. Claire turned. Ella entered, damp curls bouncing, paper tucked under her arm. She stopped when she saw Marshall, tilting her head curiously. "Hi," she said. Marshall offered a soft smile. "Hi." Claire stood. "Ella, this is Mr. Green. He's a friend from a long time ago." Ella brightened. "Oh, are you the hotel man?" Marshall blinked. "Excuse me?" She giggled, pulling a folded paper from behind her back. "I saw your name on the Learning Center brochure at school. You're the one building the new one, right?" He looked at Claire, surprised. Claire nodded slightly. "I am," Marshall said gently. "How did you know?" "I drew this for the thank you wall," she said, unfolding a paper airplane with drawings of a school and the words, "Thank you for helping us fly." Marshall took the paper like it was made of glass. Claire watched him carefully. Ella tilted her head. "You look kinda like me." The world seemed to stop. Claire stepped in. "Why don't you go change, baby? I'll be home in a bit." Ella nodded, giving Marshall one more curious glance before skipping to the back. Marshall pressed the paper plane flat on the table, his hands trembling. "She's incredible," he whispered. Claire nodded. "She is." He looked up. "Please don't shut me out." Claire's eyes shimmered. "I don't know what this is, Marshall. I really don't. But if you're here to fix something, be careful." "Not everything broken needs repair. Some things just need peace." He nodded, standing slowly. "I understand." Claire picked up the paper airplane and held it between them. "She believes in flying, in hope. I've worked hard to keep that alive in her." He looked at her, the woman he once left behind, the mother, the mystery. "I believe in it too," he said. He turned to leave, the bell chiming softly above the door, and Claire stood there, watching him go, holding the paper plane like a fragile piece of truth. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought mattered to me either way. Marshall hadn't planned to return so soon, but that paper airplane hadn't left his pocket. Folded neatly, tucked into his suit like a secret he wasn't ready to let go of. Every time he touched it, he felt the edges, not just of paper, but of something deeper: regret, wonder, hope. That morning, the clouds over Savannah sat heavy and still. The air was thick, like something was waiting to break. He stood outside the diner again, not out of habit but instinct. Inside, Claire was prepping the register, head down, her curls loose today. A breeze kicked up and sent a single napkin fluttering across the sidewalk, brushing against his shoe. The bell above the door jingled as he stepped inside. Claire looked up. "You're early." "I needed to see you," he said. She raised a brow. "Marshall, this isn't helping." He crossed to the counter. "I don't think I'm supposed to pretend I didn't meet my daughter." Claire stiffened. "You didn't meet your daughter. You met Ella, and she has a father." "I'm not here to take anything from Ben." She narrowed her eyes. "Then what are you here to take?" The room went quiet, save for the coffee machine gurgling behind them. "I don't know yet," he said honestly. "But I do know this, what I saw in her face. It's part of me, and maybe that means nothing to you. But it means everything to me." Claire stepped out from behind the counter, drying her hands on a dish towel. Her voice dropped. "You don't get to show up and feel entitled to a life you walked away from." He paused, his voice low and raw. "You think I don't replay that moment in my head? Every time I sit alone in a penthouse hotel room with nothing but silence and success to keep me warm?" She stared at him, jaw tense, as something behind her eyes softened. Just for a second. Before either could say more, the diner door opened and Ben walked in, holding Ella's hand. She wore a yellow raincoat dotted with tiny bees and carried a brown lunch bag. Claire turned fast. "You're early." Ben shrugged. "Rain's coming. Wanted to get ahead of it." He spotted Marshall, and his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Morning." Marshall gave a polite nod. "Ben." Ella lit up when she saw him. "Mr. Green!" "Hey there," he replied, kneeling just a bit. "You remember me?" She nodded, already unzipping her bag. "Mama said I can bring 2 friends to the school fair. I want to bring Benny and maybe you." Ben raised an eyebrow. Claire looked stricken. Marshall smiled gently. "That's kind of you, but I might be a little old for bounce houses." Ella giggled. "Not if you wear sneakers." "Ella," Claire said softly, moving toward her. "Go get your reading log from the back. It's on the counter." The girl skipped off. Ben turned to Marshall. "Can we talk outside?" Claire opened her mouth to object, but Marshall was already stepping toward the door. They walked just far enough to be out of earshot. Ben folded his arms. "You've had your moments. You've seen her, and you've stirred enough." Marshall stayed calm. "I didn't plan this." "No, but you sure haven't backed off either." A pause. Ben looked toward the diner window, where Claire stood watching them, concern etched in every line of her face. "She built something real," Ben said. "It may not be wrapped in luxury, but it's honest. You drop in with your tailored suits and unfinished business, and you shake her all over again." "I didn't come to shake her," Marshall said, voice steady. "I came because I couldn't sleep after seeing that girl, after seeing Claire. I thought I buried this part of my life, but turns out I just paved over it." Ben's expression didn't change, but something about his stance softened. Marshall went on, "I'm not here to undo anything. I don't want to take your place. I want a seat at the table, even if it's at the edge." Ben looked at him long and hard. "Then don't take the first one offered. Let her decide." Marshall nodded once. "Fair." They turned back toward the diner. Claire was wiping the same spot on the counter, but her eyes hadn't left them. That afternoon, Marshall made a quiet call from his hotel suite. "Avery?" he said into the phone. His sister's voice came through, sharp as always. "Well, if it isn't the runaway philanthropist, I need a favor. Let me guess, you want to use the foundation to fund something in Savannah. Am I right?" He hesitated. "How quickly can we approve a grant for a school library upgrade?" Silence. "You're serious?" "Dead serious." Avery exhaled. "You're not trying to buy her back, are you?" "No," he said quietly. "I'm trying to leave something better behind than just regret." By sunset, the drizzle had returned. Marshall walked by the elementary school near the edge of town. The brick walls were old, chipped in places. The library windows were taped at the corners. He stood there a while, hands in his coat, the same way he did when waiting for a plane that never quite arrived. And behind him, a small voice broke the silence. "Mr. Green?" He turned. Ella stood by the fence, raincoat on, holding a book to her chest. "My mom said you build things," she said. "I do." She looked at the school, then back at him. "Can you build something here?" He crouched down. "Why here?" "Because the roof leaks when it rains, and Mr. Harrow said we might lose our books if we can't fix it." Marshall swallowed. "I think I can do something about that," he said. Ella smiled. It was quiet. "Sure." Then she stepped forward and placed the book in his hand, a well-worn copy of Charlotte's Web. "It's my favorite," she said. "It's about friends who help each other." And without another word, she turned and ran back toward a waiting car. Claire was in the driver's seat, watching. She didn't wave, but she didn't look away either. The next morning, Marshall found himself on the quiet edge of Savannah's East District, parked outside a white brick bungalow with azaleas growing wild along the fence line. His GPS had called it Thelma Ray's garden studio, but the crooked mailbox simply read Miss Ray. He hadn't planned on coming. But after Ella's question about building something here, and Claire's silent stare from the driver's seat, he felt a shift. He couldn't press harder with Claire, not yet, but someone else might hold the missing thread he needed to understand the life they'd built without him. Ms. Thelma Ray had known Claire's family since Claire was a girl. Back before Marshall was even a name, Claire dared to whisper to her church friends. And when Claire moved back to Savannah all those years ago, it was Ms. Ray who opened her porch and made her tea when no one else asked why she looked so broken. Marshall stepped up to the porch, brushing rain from his coat sleeve, and knocked. A moment later, the door creaked open. The woman who appeared had silver hair wrapped in a floral scarf, a faded shawl over her shoulders, and eyes that had seen far more than she let on. "You're not my gardener," she said, peering at him. "No, ma'am." "My name is Marshall Green." "I know who you are," he hesitated. "Claire never—" "She didn't need to," Mrs. Ray interrupted, stepping aside. "Come in before you catch pneumonia trying to rewrite history on my front steps." Inside, the home smelled of eucalyptus and old books. Photos lined the mantel, some black and white, others sun-faded color. A kettle whistled faintly from the kitchen. "Sit," she said, motioning to the couch. "You're not the first man to knock on this door, looking for what he left behind." Marshall obeyed, clasping his hands. "I'm not trying to intrude." "Of course you are. The question is whether you're doing it to soothe your guilt or to offer something useful." He looked up at her, caught off guard. "I didn't know about Ella." "And you didn't ask," she said, disappearing into the kitchen. Marshall sank back into the cushion. His eyes wandered to a photo of Claire at 16, standing barefoot in the garden, laughing. Ms. Ray returned with 2 mismatched mugs. "She came back here with nothing but a suitcase and swollen ankles," she said, handing him tea. "Didn't cry, didn't complain, just rolled up her sleeves and took whatever job she could find. I never meant for it to be like that." "No one means to shatter glass when they throw a rock," she replied, sipping her tea. "But it still breaks." Marshall stared into his cup. "Is she happy?" Ms. Ray took a long breath. "She's content. There's a difference." "I want to know her again," he said, almost to himself. "And what makes you think she needs to be known by you?" she asked. He blinked. "Because I was her husband." "You were her husband," she corrected. "Ben is her husband now. You were the chapter that taught her how to rebuild." Marshall flinched. Silence grew between them. "She has every right to keep you out," Ms. Ray said softly. "But she hasn't. Not completely. That means something. She's watching. Waiting." "She's just not ready to hand over the keys to the house you left abandoned." Marshall's voice dropped. "What about Ella?" "She doesn't know," Miss Ray said. "Claire's always said when the time comes it'll be handled gently, but she's not a fool, Marshall. That child looks in the mirror and sees your jawline. She's a smart girl. Questions will come." He nodded slowly. "You want a place in her life?" Mrs. Ray leaned forward. "Don't knock on Claire's door. Knock on Ella's world, quietly, steadily. Build something that shows her who you are, not who you were." Marshall swallowed. "How?" Mrs. Ray smiled faintly. "Start with her library." By mid-afternoon, he was standing with the principal of Ella's school in a damp hallway with flickering lights. The woman, mid-50s and sharp, looked skeptical at first. "You're telling me you want to fully renovate the library?" "Yes," Marshall said. "New shelves, new roof, better lighting." "I'll cover the entire cost." She squinted. "No red tape?" "No press," he said. "No photo ops, just books and dry ceilings." The principal folded her arms. "This isn't how developers usually operate." "I'm not here as a developer," he said. "I'm here because someone who walks these halls every day asked me to." She looked at him, searching his face. Then, slowly, she nodded. "We need help. If you're sincere, we'll take it." "I am." And he was. That night, Marshall walked the cobbled paths of Forsyth Park alone, the paper airplane now soft at the corners from being unfolded and refolded in his hands. His phone buzzed in his pocket. "Avery," he answered. "Hey." "You made headlines," she said. Savannah Chronicle posted a blurb about some anonymous donor funding the school library. Sound familiar? He smiled faintly. "It wasn't supposed to get out." "Things like this always do," she said. Then, after a beat, "I'm proud of you." Marshall didn't speak for a moment. Then, quietly, "I think I'm just trying to do something that matters." "It does," she said. "Keep going." As he hung up, he looked up at the magnolia trees overhead, their branches heavy with memory. Savannah was beginning to feel less like a detour and more like a destination, and somewhere across town, a little girl was probably telling her mom about the man who said he'd help fix the roof, about her favorite book, about the new drawing she made. Maybe Claire would smile, maybe not. But Marshall was no longer waiting for permission. He was building something, and this time he wouldn't walk away. Claire was restocking napkins when she saw him again. The lunch rush had faded, leaving behind the usual clatter of coffee mugs and soft chatter from retirees at table 3. A breeze from the open door carried in the scent of wet pavement and late summer humidity. And there he was, Marshall, standing just inside, not in a suit this time, but in rolled-up sleeves and jeans that looked too new to be his. She didn't say a word. He walked to the counter and set a small brown paper bag on top. She raised an eyebrow. "What's this?" "Banana bread," he said. "From that bakery near Chippewa Square. You used to love it." Claire narrowed her eyes, but something flickered behind them. "Used to? You still might." She stared at the bag, then at him. "You don't get to drop in here with pastries like we're still us." "I know." "You don't know," she said softly, her voice tight. "Because if you did, you wouldn't keep showing up like this is some kind of second act." Marshall leaned in, voice low, steady. "It's not about us." Claire crossed her arms. "It's about her," he continued. "I spoke with Ms. Ray. I visited the school. I've started the paperwork for the renovations." Her posture shifted, just slightly. "You really did that?" "I did." Claire stared at him, lips parted. "Why?" "Because when Ella handed me that paper airplane, when she told me it was about helping others fly, I knew exactly what I'd missed all these years." Claire looked away, her voice breaking before she could fully control it. "You don't get to walk into her world because it suddenly suits your conscience." "I know that," he said again. "I don't want to rewrite the past. I just want to be useful now." They stood in silence for a beat. Outside, cicadas buzzed in the oak trees. Inside, the clink of a spoon stirred the room back into motion. "Ben's been good to her," she said. "I see that." "He's been good to me." Marshall nodded. "I'm not here to undo anything, but if there's a door open, even just a crack, I want to earn my way through it." Claire looked at him long and hard, then turned to pour a fresh cup of coffee, her hands moving slower than usual. "She asked about you," she said. His breath caught. Claire continued, placing the mug in front of him. "Last night, said you seemed nice, said you looked a little like her." He smiled faintly. "She's perceptive." Claire sat across from him, her voice softer now. "What are you hoping will happen, Marshall?" He didn't answer right away. Then, slowly, "I don't want to replace anyone. I don't want to confuse her. But maybe, someday, she'll want to know where her laugh came from, or why she loves to fix things with her hands. Maybe she'll want to know me, and if that day ever comes, I want to be someone worth knowing." Claire looked down, her fingers circling the rim of the cup. "She's not ready." "I am." Her eyes met his. "And what if she never is?" Marshall breathed in deeply. "Then I'll still be here." Quietly, without expectation. Claire didn't respond, but something in her eyes shifted. A softening, not quite trust, but less fear. Before either of them could say more, the door opened again, and Ella stepped in with a crumpled permission slip in her hand. Her cheeks were flushed from the walk, and her rain boots squeaked on the floor. "Hey, Mama," she said breathlessly. "Ms. Harrow said I need you to sign this for the garden trip." Claire took the paper and pen from her, glancing at the note. "You've got your boots, but you forgot your jacket." "It's not cold." "It's still wet," Claire said, signing the form. Ella turned to Marshall. "Hi again." "Hi, Ella," she grinned. "Are you going to come to the fair?" Claire glanced at Marshall quickly, but he didn't hesitate. "If your mom says it's okay," he said, "I'd like to." Ella beamed. "We're having a book swap and cupcakes." "Sounds perfect." Claire gently ushered her toward the back. "Go put this in your bag, then wash up." Once Ella disappeared, Claire exhaled. "She's getting attached." Marshall's voice was barely above a whisper. "So am I." Claire stood. "This isn't just about you and her. It's about all of us. Me, Ben, the life we've built. You don't get to step in without causing ripples. I'm not stepping in, he said. I'm standing nearby, waiting for permission. Her eyes welled before she could stop it. You were supposed to be my person, Marshall, and when I needed you most, you vanished. I know. I buried that part of me for years, and now... She broke off, biting her lip. He reached out but stopped short. I'll never forgive myself for that. Claire looked at him, really looked at him. I don't need your guilt. I need your honesty. You have it. A long pause filled the space between them like a held breath. Claire stepped back. Then be patient. Let her come to you. Marshall nodded. Always. And for the first time, Claire didn't walk away angry. She simply walked away. Leaving Marshall at the counter with a cooling cup of coffee, a folded paper bag of banana bread, and the slow, quiet hope that maybe, for the first time in 10 years, he hadn't broken something. He was helping it grow. The autumn breeze rolled in that Saturday morning, brushing golden leaves across the sidewalks like quiet applause. Savannah felt softer under the October sun, cooler, lighter. Marshall stood on the edge of the school parking lot, watching families gather for the fall fair. Paper pumpkins hung from tree branches. Children laughed, running from booth to booth with sticky fingers and painted faces. He had no official role here, no banner with his name, just a backpack full of books he'd bought from the local shop, each one labeled with a small sticker. This book was donated in honor of Ella. He wasn't sure if Claire would show, or if Ben would be here, or if he'd made a mistake agreeing to come at all. Mr. Green! The voice shot through the noise. He turned just as Ella came bounding toward him, hair tied up in a lopsided ponytail, one arm waving wildly. You came! He smiled as she barreled into him with a hug that knocked the air from his chest. Of course I did. I saved you a seat at the cupcake table, she said, grabbing his hand. He let her pull him forward, laughing as they weaved past hay bales and apple-bobbing stations. His feet stumbled once over a rogue pumpkin, and Ella giggled like it was the funniest thing she'd ever seen. They reached a table decked in orange cloth and frosting bowls. Kids sat in rows, eyes wide as a volunteer explained how to pipe leaves and candy corn. Ella leaned close and whispered, I'm going to make a spider cupcake. Terrifying, Marshall whispered back. I love it. While she decorated with fierce concentration, he looked around. Claire was by the book swap table, wearing jeans and a deep green cardigan. Her eyes met his briefly, measured, unreadable, but she didn't look away. Next to her stood Ben, a clipboard in one hand, checking off names. He looked content, grounded. Marshall turned back to the table, trying not to feel like an echo in someone else's life. After the cupcakes were judged and half-eaten, Ella tugged his sleeve. Want to see my favorite place? Lead the way. She took him past the playground toward a little patch of raised garden beds behind the school. The Literacy Garden, a sign read, hand-painted in bright blue. This is where I read at recess, she said, hopping onto a bench. That one, she pointed at a yellowing bush, is my butterfly plant. It's beautiful, Marshall said. I read Charlotte's Web out here, she added, kicking her feet. That's where I cried, right there. Marshall sat beside her. That book made me cry too, especially the ending. She looked at him with sudden seriousness. Do you think people come back after they leave? Like, if they go away for a long time? His breath caught. Sometimes. If they're lucky and brave enough. Ella nodded like she understood something beyond her years. Then she turned back to the garden. My mom was sad for a long time, she said, voice low. She didn't tell me why, but I knew. Marshall didn't answer. I asked her once if she'd ever been in love before Daddy, she continued. She said yes, but it didn't end right. He looked at her, really looked at her. Her small hands, her tilted nose, the way she talked like she was still figuring out where the world ended and stories began. She's strong, he said. Ella nodded. I think she's made of bricks and soup. He smiled. That sounds about right. From across the garden, Claire's voice rose gently. Ella, honey, 10 minutes to clean up. Coming, Ella called. She looked back at Marshall, then did something unexpected. She reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a wrinkled photograph. It was small, faded, and bent at the corners. This is from Mama's dresser, she whispered. I wasn't supposed to take it, but I wanted to ask you. Marshall took it carefully. It was a photo from years ago, him and Claire on their balcony in Atlanta, his arm around her shoulders, her head tilted back in a laugh, sunlight soaking through her curls. He stared at it for a long moment. Where'd you find this? She keeps it in a box, with a necklace and a letter. Marshall blinked. Ella watched him carefully. Is that you? He nodded slowly. Yes. She didn't say anything else, just looked at him with eyes too big for her small face, waiting for answers she hadn't found the words for. He handed the photo back. Maybe you should ask your mom. She already knows, Ella said. She's just waiting for you to be ready. He looked at her, stunned. She slid the photo back into her jacket. You look better now. How's that? You're less shiny, she said. You look like someone real. Before he could respond, Claire appeared at the edge of the garden path. Ella, she said gently, can you go help with the paint station? Miss Harrow's looking for you. Ella hopped down. Okay. She glanced back at Marshall. Don't leave yet. He stood as Claire walked toward him. She knows, he said quietly. Claire nodded. She's always been more intuitive than I was at that age. I never meant for this to happen like this. I know. I'm not trying to take her from Ben. Claire folded her arms. Ben doesn't feel threatened. He feels blindsided. There's a difference. I just want to be someone she can trust. Claire met his eyes. Then start by trusting me. I'll talk to her, soon, but gently. Marshall exhaled. Okay. She turned to go, but paused. She called you real. That's not something she says lightly. He watched her walk away, the hem of her cardigan brushing against her jeans, her posture strong as ever. And for the first time, he didn't feel like an intruder. He felt like a seed that might finally have a place to grow. The leaves were beginning to change, painting savanna in hues of cinnamon and gold. At the edge of Pulaski Square, Marshall sat on a weathered bench beneath a sprawling oak, the afternoon sun flickering through the Spanish moss like a memory trying to land. He didn't know how long he'd been sitting there, only that time had taken on a different shape since arriving here, since seeing Claire again, since meeting Ella. She knew. Claire hadn't said the words outright, but the weight in her voice, the way her eyes had lingered that afternoon in the garden, it was clear. Ella had made the connection, and instead of recoiling, she had reached forward. He'd expected resistance, maybe confusion, but not this strange calm, this quiet unraveling. A child knowing her truth without fear. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, expecting Avery or his assistant, but it was Claire. Can you come by the house at 5? She wants to talk. He stared at the message, reading it again, then again. 5 o'clock felt like a courtroom hour, the kind of time where lives pivot. He typed back one word, yes. The sun was lower now, casting long shadows across the wooden porch of Claire and Ben's house. It was modest, with white siding and blue shutters that had faded gently over time. The garden in front looked freshly watered. Something about it felt like a place that had been fought for, not bought, but earned. Claire opened the door before he could knock. She didn't smile, but she didn't seem cold either, just present, focused. She's in her room, she said quietly. We didn't push her. She came to us last night with the photo. Marshall nodded. I'm sorry if... She wasn't upset, Claire interrupted. Just curious. and honest, like always. She stepped aside. The inside of the home smelled like lemon and vanilla, comfort stitched into every cushion and creaking floorboard. Marshall took a breath, steadying himself. Claire led him down a hallway with a few family photos on the wall, one of Ella and Ben on a fishing trip, another of Claire kneeling beside Ella in a Halloween costume that looked homemade and lopsided. No picture of Marshall, no trace of the life before. She paused at a closed door and knocked softly. "Sweetheart?" "He's here," a small voice replied. "Okay." Claire looked back at Marshall once more. "Take your time." She left him there, alone. He took one step, then another, and opened the door. Ella sat on her bed, cross-legged, surrounded by stuffed animals and books stacked like towers. The window behind her let in the last orange light of day. She clutched the same photo as before, him and Claire, younger, brighter, untouched by the mess that would come later. She looked up, eyes wide but calm. "Hi." "Hi," he said, easing into the desk chair across from her. "Thanks for letting me come." She nodded, then tilted her head. "Was it true?" Marshall's throat tightened. "That I'm the man in that photo?" She nodded again. "Yes," he said. "That's me, from a long time ago." She looked down at the photo. "You look happy." "I was, very much." "Were you married to my mom?" He hesitated, but not for long. "Yes." "Then why aren't you here now?" That was the question, wasn't it? Marshall leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped together. "I made some choices," he said slowly. "Ones I thought were right at the time. But looking back, they hurt people. People I loved." Ella listened without blinking. "I wasn't ready to be the kind of man your mom needed, or the kind of dad a child deserves." She looked at him closely. "So you left?" He exhaled. "I did." "Did you know about me?" He swallowed. "No, I didn't." "Not until recently." Ella picked at the edge of her blanket. "Would you have stayed if you knew?" His voice caught in his chest. "I want to say yes, but I can't go back and change what I did. All I can do now is be here, if you'll let me." She stared at him, her young face full of something far too grown. "I like Ben," she said. "I do too. He's good at fixing broken bikes." Marshall smiled softly. "That's a good thing to be good at." She leaned forward. "Are you good at anything?" His laugh surprised even himself. "I guess I'm good at building things. Big things, buildings, projects, but I'm learning how to build something smaller now, something harder." "What's that?" "A relationship," he said. "With you." She sat with that. "I like books," she said. "I know. I brought you something." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a wrapped bundle. She opened it slowly, careful not to tear the paper. Inside was a copy of The Little Prince, bound in soft blue leather. "It was one of my favorites when I was your age," he said. "It's about seeing things with your heart, not just your eyes." Ella traced the cover with her fingers. "Will you read it with me?" she asked quietly. He blinked, the words hitting him harder than he expected. "I'd be honored." She smiled, a real one this time. And without another word, she scooted over on the bed, patted the spot beside her, and opened the first page. Outside the room, Claire leaned against the hallway wall, one hand over her chest. The soft hum of Marshall's voice reading filled the air like music from another life, one she thought had ended. But maybe, just maybe, it was turning into something new, something quiet and whole. Marshall hadn't expected peace to feel so fragile. He drove back to the rental that night with The Little Prince still echoing in his mind, the way Ella leaned into his shoulder during Chapter 3, how her fingers rested just slightly against his arm, as if anchoring herself. He hadn't realized how much of his life had been built around things that didn't touch him back, but the softness of that moment, of being wanted even briefly, had undone something deep. Still, he knew better than to let comfort confuse him. That night wasn't a finish line, it was a beginning, and beginnings were delicate. The next morning, he stood in line at the Corner House Cafe, Savannah's favorite Sunday haunt. Locals were shoulder to shoulder for their peach glazed scones and cinnamon cold brew. Marshall wasn't here for the pastries. Claire had agreed to meet him. Just coffee, just a conversation. But his hands still couldn't stop fidgeting with the cardboard sleeve around his cup. She arrived 10 minutes late, dressed in a slate blue dress with a scarf tied at her neck. Her hair was pulled back, loose curls brushing her jaw. When she spotted him, her expression gave nothing away. "Hey," she said, sliding into the seat across from him. "Hey." He offered a tight smile. "Thanks for coming. I figured if we're going to do this, we need rules." He raised his eyebrows. "Okay." "I need to know where this is going," she said. "With Ella, with you. I can't afford to let her hope for something that vanishes again." Marshall nodded. "I agree." "I'm not asking you to disappear," Claire continued, her voice low but firm. "But I need boundaries. For her, for Ben, for me." He leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Name them." Claire blinked, surprised. "I mean it," he said. "Whatever you need to feel safe in this, I'll honor it." She studied him. "I need you to tell your wife." The air shifted. Marshall sat back slowly. "She deserves to know what you're building here," Claire said. "Not just the charity, the connection." He hesitated. "We're not in a good place." "Exactly," she said gently. "Secrets don't heal anything. Not for Sloane. Not for Ella." He looked down at his coffee. "I will, I promise." Claire softened just a touch. "I believe you mean that." A beat passed between them. The clatter of dishes and coffee spoons filled the silence. "She adores you already," Claire said quietly. "That terrifies me." "I won't let her down." "I hope not." Her voice cracked. "Because if you do, I'll have to clean it up. And she's been through enough." He swallowed. "So have you." Their eyes locked, and for a moment the years between them folded in like paper. "I thought I hated you," she whispered. "I thought I hated myself." Claire looked away, blinking fast. "It would have been easier if I still did." A long pause stretched between them before she stood, slinging her purse over her shoulder. "I have to go," she said. "Ben's dad is in town. We're having dinner." Marshall nodded, trying not to show how much those words hit him. "Thank you for the talk." She stepped away, then hesitated. "Ella asked if you could help her build a birdhouse next weekend. I told her I'd ask." A smile broke through his composure. "I'd love to." Claire gave the faintest nod and walked out into the golden sun, disappearing into the crowd like smoke. That afternoon, back at the rental, Marshall sat at his laptop with an untouched whiskey glass beside him. His inbox was overflowing. Land deals, investor questions, a reminder about the Denver conference, but none of it felt real, not compared to Claire's voice or Ella's question. He opened a blank document and began typing, to Sloane, then paused. Where do you start a letter that undoes 10 years of a carefully constructed life? He deleted the line. Tried again. Sloane, I've failed you. Not with infidelity, but with honesty. He stopped again. Too heavy. He stood, paced the room, then sat back down. This wasn't about guilt. It was about truth. He took a deep breath and let his fingers move. Sloane, there's something I need to tell you. Not because I'm trying to hurt you, but because hiding it would be the deeper betrayal. I've met someone. He stared at the words, then deleted someone. I've reconnected with someone. From before. Her name is Claire. You may remember me mentioning her from years ago. What I didn't know then, and I know now, is that we have a daughter. Her name is Ella. She's 10. She's brilliant. She's funny and kind and observant in a way that slices through people. She's everything I didn't know I was missing. I didn't seek this out, but I'm choosing not to walk away from it. You've always said the truth matters more than comfort. So here it is. I don't know what this means for us yet, but I can't pretend anymore. I won't. Marshall. He sat back, exhaling. The air felt heavier now, like the world had tilted into something more honest. He hit send. That evening, a knock came at the door. He opened it to find Avery, arms crossed, eyebrow raised. "You sent that letter to Sloane without calling me first? How do you know about that?" She forwarded it, with the subject line, "I hope you're proud of your client." Marshall winced. "She'll be okay." "I don't care about her reaction," Avery said. "I care that you did the right thing, for once." "I did." Avery stepped inside. "You're in this deep, aren't you?" Marshall nodded. "I am." "Then you better keep showing up," she said, "because Claire's not the only one watching. Savannah's small. Word travels." "I know." "And Marshall?" "Yeah?" Avery smiled faintly. "You're finally starting to look like the man you said you wanted to be 10 years ago." She walked out without another word, leaving the door open behind her. And this time, Marshall didn't feel the need to close it. The scent of sawdust clung to the air, sweet and sharp, as Marshall knelt beside Ella in the backyard. The birdhouse kit lay spread out between them, wooden panels lined up neatly, small nails set in rows like a makeshift army. Claire had set out lemonade on the porch, her watchful presence never far, yet never intruding. "Is this straight?" Ella asked, tilting the front panel against the base. Marshall leaned in. "Let's see." He squinted, aligning the edges with his fingers. "Just a little to the left. There. Perfect." She grinned and carefully tapped a nail into place. "You're a natural," he said. "I've never built anything like this," she said, glancing up at him. "Only helped with my class garden and the compost bin. But this is cooler." "You're a builder," he said. "It runs in your blood." She looked at him, eyes soft and curious. "Did you build stuff with your dad?" Marshall paused, caught off guard. "No," he said slowly. "He wasn't really around. I learned from people I worked with, from books, from mistakes." Ella nodded, as if filing that away. "You're lucky," he added. "You've got Ben, and now—" He hesitated. "If you want me." She reached for another nail, quiet for a moment. "Do you think 3 people can be a family?" Marshall's chest tightened. "I do, if they choose to be, and if they make space for each other." Ella smiled and handed him a nail. "Then I choose that." From the porch, Claire watched them, hands clasped in front of her, unreadable. But when Ella turned to wave at her, she waved back, and her mouth curved just enough to betray something hopeful. By the time the birdhouse was standing, painted in messy brushstrokes of yellow and teal, the sun had slipped behind the trees. "It's perfect," Ella declared. "It is," Marshall agreed, "just like you said, built together." Inside, Claire was drying her hands when Marshall stepped into the kitchen. "She had a good time," he said softly. Claire nodded. She needed this, not just the birdhouse. You. He hesitated. "And you?" She turned slowly, drying her hands with a towel. "I'm still trying to figure out what I need." He nodded. "That's fair." They stood there for a moment in silence, the hum of the refrigerator filling the space between them. "I told Sloane," he said. Claire looked up, surprised. He continued, "I sent her a letter. She deserved to know." "Is she okay?" "I don't think she expected honesty from me," he said. "I don't know what's next for us, but I couldn't build something here while hiding from it there." Claire exhaled, nodding slowly. "That matters. A lot." He stepped a little closer, voice gentler now. "Do you think there's a version of this where we're okay again? You and me?" Claire didn't answer right away. Instead, she leaned against the counter and folded her arms, eyes distant. "There's a version," she said. "But it's not a return. It's a rewrite." He nodded, absorbing that. "I don't want to rush anything," he said. "I just wanted to say it out loud." I'm glad you did. Another silence passed, but this one felt warmer, less sharp. Just then, Ben's car pulled into the driveway. Claire straightened, instinctively smoothing her blouse. He's early. Marshall took a step back, readjusting his posture. Should I go? She paused. No, stay. The front door creaked open, and Ben walked in with a small bag of groceries. Hey, he said, stopping short when he saw Marshall. Hey, Marshall replied. Ben set the bag down. Ella in bed? Just went up, Claire said. Ben glanced between them, his expression calm but unreadable. Busy afternoon? We built a birdhouse, Marshall said. She picked the colors. Ben cracked a small smile. Let me guess. Bright yellow and teal. Marshall chuckled. Exactly. Claire cleared her throat. Ben, do you have a minute? He nodded. They moved to the living room, Marshall standing slightly apart as Claire sat beside Ben on the couch. I think it's time we talk, she began, about what's really happening. Ben looked at her, then at Marshall, and nodded again. I love the life we've built, she said. You've been there when I didn't even know I needed someone. And Ella, she loves you deeply. Ben said nothing, just listened. But Marshall's not just someone from the past anymore, she continued. He's part of her now, and that's not going to change. Ben finally spoke, his voice steady. I never thought it would. Marshall stepped forward, not wanting to stay silent. Ben, I know what it looks like, and I know how much you've been to them. I'm not here to erase that, or compete with it. Ben looked him in the eye. Then what are you here for? Marshall took a breath. To earn my place, whatever that looks like. As long as Ella wants me around, and Claire allows it, I'll be here, quietly, respectfully, fully. Ben held his gaze, then looked at Claire, then back at Marshall. Then we do this carefully, Ben said. For her. Marshall nodded. Absolutely. Claire relaxed just slightly, the tightness in her shoulders easing. I'm not asking you to be friends, she said, but I am asking for peace, for Ella's sake. Ben stood and extended a hand to Marshall. We can do that, he said. Marshall shook it, surprised at the strength behind it, not forceful but grounded, real. As the room settled into a new understanding, Ella's voice floated down from upstairs. Mama, did you hang the birdhouse yet? Claire smiled. Not yet, baby. Maybe tomorrow. Marshall looked toward the staircase, heart fuller than it had been in years. Tomorrow. It didn't promise perfection, but for the first time it promised possibility. The first rain in weeks came soft and slow, tracing long streaks down Claire's kitchen window. It was Saturday morning. Quiet. Still. Marshall sat at the table, hands wrapped around a steaming mug Claire had placed in front of him, even though she hadn't asked if he wanted coffee. It was a small grace, and he didn't take it lightly. Upstairs, the soft thud of Ella's footsteps passed overhead. She woke up early, Claire said, folding a dish towel neatly over the sink rail. She's nervous. She asked me to be there, Marshall replied. Claire nodded without turning. She wants the three of us together, for the test. The word hung heavy in the space between them. The test. Marshall had waited weeks for this moment, and yet now, faced with it, he felt like he was on the edge of something irreversible. DNA confirmation. Not just memory, not just emotion, but science, paper, proof. Claire turned around, arms crossed loosely over her chest. I've been thinking about something she said. He looked up. She asked me if she'd still be Ella if the test came back different. Like, if biology changed who she was. His chest ached. What did you tell her? I told her no, that love builds identity, not blood. Marshall swallowed. Do you believe that? I want to, she said quietly. But it's hard not to wonder what life would have been like if things had gone differently. He stood, pacing a little to ease the rising storm in his chest. I think about it every day. She watched him, her expression unreadable. What if the test says she's yours, Marshall? What happens next? He turned to face her. Then I honor that. Carefully. With your blessing. With Ben's. I won't bulldoze my way into her world. And if it says she's not, he paused. Then I stay anyway. Claire's brows lifted. He stepped closer. I'm not here because I want to fix the past. I'm here because the present matters, because she matters. No matter what that paper says, she's mine, in a way that has nothing to do with genetics. Claire didn't respond for a moment. Then, quietly, Ben agreed to come too. She asked. Marshall nodded. Good. She needs all of us. There was something in Claire's eyes then, soft, guarded, but not closed off. She's stronger than we are, she murmured. She is. Claire exhaled. Okay, let's go find out. The clinic sat just off Abercorn Street, in a clean brick building with ivy growing up one side. The receptionist smiled warmly when Claire signed in, and Marshall followed her and Ella down the short hallway to a small room with 2 chairs and a white-tiled floor. Ella wore her favorite yellow sweater. She held both their hands, one in each, and swung them slightly as she walked. Inside, the nurse explained the process. Just a cheek swab. Quick, simple. Ella nodded solemnly. I'm not scared. Marshall smiled down at her. Of course you're not. She sat still as the nurse took her sample, then Marshall's, then Ben's. When it was over, the nurse left with a promise. 2 weeks. Maybe sooner. They stepped out into the rain. Ella broke free first, running ahead into the parking lot, twirling in slow circles, her arms outstretched as water soaked her sleeves. Claire opened her umbrella. Marshall didn't bother. He just watched her, this little girl who was everything light and wonder. She looks like you when you were 20, he said softly. Claire turned, her eyes glistening. She acts like you. They both laughed, tired and full. Ben joined them moments later, car keys in hand. She wants to ride with you, he told Marshall. If that's okay. Marshall looked at Claire. She nodded. Take her. We'll meet back at the house. As Ella climbed into his passenger seat, dripping and beaming, Marshall turned the key and let the heat warm the car. Do you think they know already? She asked. The people at the lab? Maybe, he said. But what matters is what you know. I know I like you, she said. He smiled, heart tight. That's more than enough for me. As the windshield wipers brushed away the rain, she looked over at him with eyes wide and open. Do you think love can grow backwards? She asked. Marshall turned to her, puzzled. Like, if you didn't know someone was yours, but then you do, can you love them like they were always there? His throat caught. Yes, he said softly. I think that's exactly how it works. She leaned her head against the window and closed her eyes, rain still tapping gently overhead. And in that moment, he realized, whatever the results, his heart had already chosen. 2 weeks passed like slow thunder. Every morning, Marshall opened his inbox before sunrise, half expecting the email to be there. And every morning, it wasn't. Claire kept things steady for Ella. Homework, movie nights, weekend pancakes, but the tension pressed into every pause between sentences. Even Ben, usually composed and sure-footed, had grown quieter, folding more than speaking. And Ella, she moved through the days with a forced brightness, like someone holding their breath under glass. Then it arrived. Monday, 6:42 a.m., subject line, paternity test results, confidential. Marshall sat at his kitchen counter, the glow from the screen casting sharp shadows across the granite. He stared at the unopened email for a long moment, elbows on his knees, hands clasped tightly together. It wasn't fear. It was reverence. The kind of weight you only feel when the truth is both a key and a lock. He clicked. Probability of paternity, 99.97%. He read it again, then again. The air in the room changed. Denser, warmer, fuller. His heart beat louder, not faster. He wasn't surprised, but he was undone. Checked. Claire opened the door to find him standing on the porch, wet from a morning drizzle, eyes wide but soft. "She's mine," he whispered. She nodded once, lips pressed together. She'd read the email already. Neither of them spoke for a moment. Then she stepped aside. Ella was at the table with a bowl of cereal and an open picture book. She looked up and smiled the moment she saw him. "Hi," she said, like it was just any morning. "Hey, kiddo," he replied gently. Claire watched them, something tender and tired in her expression. "I haven't told her yet. I figured if you wanted, we could do it together." Marshall nodded. "Thank you." Claire knelt next to Ella, brushing a hand through her hair. "Sweetheart, remember how we talked about the test? About finding out something important?" Ella set her spoon down slowly. "Yeah?" Claire glanced at Marshall. He crouched beside her too. "The results came in," Claire said. Ella looked between them, eyes wide. "Waiting." Marshall's voice cracked. "You're mine, Ella." She blinked. "You mean you're really my dad?" He nodded, chest tight. "Yes." Her lip trembled. "So I was right?" "You were right," he whispered. "All along." And then, without a single word more, she launched herself into his arms. He caught her, held her close, felt her small fingers grip the back of his shirt like she never meant to let go. Claire pressed a hand to her mouth and turned away, walking into the kitchen, tears falling freely now, quiet, uncontested. Marshall closed his eyes. This moment, was worth every ache. "I knew it," Ella whispered against his neck. "I knew you were mine." "You're everything," he whispered back. "You always will be." That afternoon, the three of them sat in the backyard. The sky had cleared, and the birdhouse, tilted slightly, paint flaking from a few summer rains, hung proudly from the old oak branch. "I want to change my last name," Ella said suddenly. Marshall and Claire exchanged a glance. "You don't have to," Claire said gently. "There's no pressure." "I know," Ella said. "I just want both. Green Myers. So everyone knows I'm both." Marshall smiled. "That sounds perfect." Claire squeezed Ella's hand. "Then we'll make it happen." As the sun began to lower, Ella went inside to grab her art supplies. "I'm making a Green Myers flag," she shouted through the screen door. Marshall sat beside Claire, both of them watching the sky change colors. "I meant what I said," he murmured. "This doesn't change what you've built with Ben. I'm not here to rewrite it." She didn't speak for a while. Then, "Ben's been quiet. He hasn't said anything to me. He's trying to figure out where he fits now. I think we all are." Marshall nodded. "It doesn't have to be either or." Claire looked at him, tired and beautiful in the fading light. "It might, though. For some of us." He swallowed. "If it ever comes to that, I'll take the loss. You and Ella are more important than my pride." Claire reached over and placed her hand over his. "Don't disappear again," she said softly. "Never." Inside, Ella's laughter rang out, pure, certain, whole. And for the first time in years, Marshall didn't feel like he was waiting for something to fall apart. He felt like he was finally home. The late October air carried the scent of pine and wood smoke as the first signs of fall settled into Savannah. The leaves outside Claire's house had begun to turn, and Ella had started a ritual of collecting her favorite ones, pressing them between books, labeling each with the date and a memory. She called it her time garden. Inside, the atmosphere was more complicated. Marshall sat on the porch steps, his elbows on his knees, watching a red leaf swirl across the driveway. Ben's truck wasn't in the driveway anymore. He hadn't stayed after dinner 2 nights ago. He said he needed some space, but it hadn't felt like space. It had felt like goodbye. Claire stepped out quietly behind him, Holding 2 mugs, she handed him one. "Spiced cider," she said. "Ella made me promise you'd try it." He took it, grateful for the heat. "She has a future in recipe development." Claire gave a soft chuckle but then grew quiet. She asked where Ben went. "What did you say?" "That he's figuring some things out." She looked away. She didn't cry, just nodded and went back to coloring. Marshall sighed, rubbing the edge of the mug with his thumb. "He's a good man." "I know. I don't want to be the reason your family falls apart." Claire sat down beside him, wrapping her cardigan tighter around herself. "It didn't fall apart, Marshall. It shifted. Maybe that's harder, but not worse." A long pause stretched between them. "She and I, we were solid," Claire added. "Then you showed up, and everything started stirring. Not because you were wrong to come, just because she needed you. And maybe I did too, in a way I hadn't admitted." Marshall turned toward her, studying her face. "What about now?" Claire held his gaze, then looked out at the tree line. "I think I'm tired of waiting for life to happen the way it was supposed to. I want to start making choices again, not reacting, not fixing, just choosing." He nodded, but didn't press her. Instead, he said quietly, "Ella invited me to her school's fall recital." Claire smiled, her voice warm. "She told me you're her guest of honor." He let out a breath of something close to disbelief. "Do you think she understands what this all means? How complicated it is?" Claire looked at him, her expression softening. "She understands more than we think, but she doesn't see it as complicated. To her, love just adds, never subtracts." Marshall felt something in his chest loosen at that. "I want to be part of that kind of love," he said. Claire turned her eyes back toward the horizon. "Then be here, fully, not in pieces." "I am," he said, "and I will be." Just then, the screen door creaked open behind them. Ella stepped out, clutching a drawing. "Mom." "Daddy?" she said, testing the word like a song lyric she wasn't sure she could sing. Marshall's eyes flicked to Claire, then back to Ella. "Yes, baby," Claire answered gently. Ella walked down the steps and handed the drawing to them. It was a picture of their backyard tree, the birdhouse hanging in the center, and beneath it, 3 people, Marshall, Claire, and herself, smiling with hands clasped. "I drew this for our wall," she said, "so nobody forgets who we are." Marshall took the drawing carefully, his throat tight. "It's beautiful." "Do you think Ben will still come over sometimes?" Ella asked, her voice smaller now. "Even if things are different?" Claire pulled her close. "He loves you, and love doesn't leave just because things change." Ella looked up at both of them. "Can we still go to the pumpkin patch tomorrow? With all of us?" "We'll call him," Claire said, "and ask." Ella nodded and went back inside, her curls bouncing behind her. Marshall let out a shaky breath. "She's braver than either of us. She's why we have to get this right." He turned toward her. "Claire, are we writing something new here, or just finding our way back?" She hesitated, then reached for his hand. "Maybe both. Maybe we're not who we were, but maybe we're still something worth saving." Marshall tightened his fingers around hers. "Then let's not let it slip." Claire leaned against his shoulder, and together they watched the wind stir the leaves. The world hadn't given them a second chance. It had handed them a blank page, and this time they wouldn't write alone. The autumn sun dipped low behind the pine trees as the pumpkin patch glowed golden under its light. Children raced between hay bales and rows of plump gourds, their laughter drifting into the breeze. A bluegrass trio played softly near the barn, the notes dancing with the falling leaves. It should have felt festive, easy, warm, but there was a weight to today that none of them had voiced yet. Claire parked the car and glanced at the rearview mirror. Ella was already unbuckling, her sweater sleeves pushed up to her elbows, ready to run. "She's been talking about this all week," Claire said, her voice quiet. Marshall in the passenger seat nodded. "She's making a memory. She'll hold on to every detail." Especially who shows up, Claire added. Marshall turned to her. Do you think he will? Claire hesitated. He answered my text, said he needed to think about it. That wasn't a no, but it wasn't a yes either. They stepped out of the car together, and Ella ran ahead, her boots crunching through leaves. Come on, she called, waving them forward. We're going to miss the tractor ride. Marshall smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. The hayride was halfway loaded when they reached it. Claire climbed in first, then Ella, then Marshall, who helped an elderly couple behind them settle onto the straw-covered bench. The tractor sputtered to life, pulling them through the fields as the light began to shift, amber and soft. Ella leaned into Claire's side, her small hand holding tightly to Marshall's. This is my favorite day, she said. Claire kissed the top of her head. Mine too, baby. But Marshall's eyes scanned the parking lot they were leaving behind. Still no sign of Ben. The ride ended too soon, and as they walked back toward the cider stand, Marshall's phone buzzed. He pulled it from his pocket and read the message, heart thudding. Ben, I'm here. Just parked. Marshall looked up and caught Claire's eye. He's coming. Claire's breath hitched. Okay. Ella was choosing between caramel apples and kettle corn when Ben appeared from between the booths. He looked the same, understated flannel, clean jeans, unsure shoulders, but there was something heavier in his face. He paused before approaching, his eyes flicking from Claire to Ella to Marshall. Ella saw him first. Ben. She ran to him without hesitation, and he dropped to one knee, catching her in a firm hug. You made it, she said, muffled against his shirt. I wouldn't miss it, he replied, pulling back to look her in the eyes. Not for anything. She took his hand and dragged him toward the booth. We're getting cider. Marshall stayed back, watching. Claire stepped beside him. You okay? She asked. He nodded. It's good. This is good. Claire studied him. It doesn't have to be easy to be right. He looked at her, that line hitting somewhere deep. Do you think it'll ever be both? She smiled softly. Maybe not all the time, but moments like this, they're enough. They joined the others at the booth. Ella insisted on ordering for everyone, proudly listing off preferences. One cider for my mom, hot, one for my dad, he likes it plain, and one for Ben with extra cinnamon, right? Ben nodded, touched. Exactly right. Claire looked at the three of them, this strange, beautiful web of love that didn't fit a standard mold, but still held tight. After cider, they carved pumpkins. Ella's was a lopsided cat. Ben's, a perfect crescent moon. Claire made a sunflower. Marshall carved a bird, its wings wide and reaching. The sun began to slip away, casting everything in a dusky orange. As the lights strung across the barn flickered on, Ella stood in the center of them all, arms wide like a little conductor of the chaos she adored. I am the luckiest girl in the world, she said loudly, spinning once. Marshall exchanged a glance with Claire, then with Ben. No, he said gently. We are. Claire took a deep breath, reaching for both Marshall's and Ben's hands. For a moment, all four of them stood in a quiet circle, unconventional, imperfect, but deeply whole, and in the fading light of the pumpkin patch, surrounded by music and laughter and the soft hum of fall, something unspoken settled between them. Not everything broken needs to be fixed. Some things just need to be held. The airport was quiet that morning, just after dawn, before the wave of business travelers and holiday flyers swept in. Savannah's sky was brushed in soft coral light, the terminal still hushed in its waking hours. Marshall stood by the glass wall at Gate 12, hands tucked in his coat pockets, watching a small plane taxi toward the runway. It had been nearly a year since that first moment, since he'd looked up and seen Claire in uniform. a ghost from his past walking the aisle with a smile that had once belonged only to him. Now, everything had changed. And yet, somehow, the world felt more solid beneath his feet. "Your coffee," Claire said behind him, holding out a steaming cup. She wore her flight attendant uniform again, navy pressed to perfection, her name tag glinting under the terminal lights. Claire Green Myers. He took the cup. "Thanks. I still haven't gotten used to how early your call times are." She smiled, brushing a curl behind her ear. "You're getting there." They stood side by side in a silence that felt full, not empty. Ella sat nearby in a sweatshirt, 2 sizes too big, drawing airplanes on the back of a boarding pass. She looked up occasionally, checking the windows like a little navigator in charge of the whole sky. "She wants to come up with me this year," Claire said, sipping her own coffee. "Just a quick hop to Charlotte, then back by dinner." "She's ready," Marshall said. "She was practicing safety announcements yesterday. I'm still laughing about her version of the flotation device instructions." Claire chuckled. "She takes it seriously. She takes you seriously," Marshall said, glancing at her. Claire's smile softened. "She takes us seriously. The whole village." Marshall nodded, watching Ella now as she folded her drawing neatly into her backpack. "I've been thinking about what you said the other day, about starting again, about choosing." Claire raised an eyebrow, curious. "And?" He turned to her fully. "I don't want to wait anymore. Not out of fear or guilt or anything else. I've spent most of my life chasing numbers, building something big enough to feel like it mattered. But this," he motioned toward Ella, toward Claire. "This is the only thing that really counts." Claire didn't say anything at first. Then she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out something small, silver, worn smooth around the edges. "I was going to give this back to you," she said. "I found it when we cleaned out Mom's attic." "Thought maybe you forgot." Marshall took the object from her hand and stared. It was the pendant he'd given her the day they bought their first apartment, a tiny compass. The inscription inside still faintly legible. "No matter the storm, find your way back." "I thought it was gone," he whispered. "So did I," she said. "But maybe it just needed time to resurface." He closed his hand around it. "I want to come home, Claire. Not just on weekends, not just for holidays. I want to be where you are." She met his eyes. Years of heartbreak, growth, and grace resting between them. "This isn't about rewriting the past," she said. "No," he said. "It's about choosing the present, and whatever comes after." She looked toward Ella, who had wandered over to a nearby window and was holding her drawing up to the glass, comparing it to the real plane outside. "She deserves a future that feels steady," Claire said. "We can give her that," Marshall replied. "Not by being perfect, but by being here, fully." Claire didn't speak for a moment. Then she smiled, not a wide grin, but something deeper, something whole. "I'd like that," she said. Ella ran over just then, cheeks flushed, her backpack slipping off one shoulder. "They called our group. Mom, we're next." Claire knelt down to her level. "Ready for takeoff, co-pilot?" Ella nodded with a grin. "I even practiced my captain voice." Marshall bent down and kissed her forehead. "Clear skies, baby girl." She wrapped her arms around his neck for a quick hug, then pulled away and handed him something, a folded paper airplane made from her drawing. "In case you miss us," she said, "you can fly it and think of me." Marshall took it, swallowing the lump in his throat. "I'll keep it with me, always." Claire adjusted her scarf and turned to him one last time. "I'll call you when we land. I'll be waiting." She and Ella disappeared through the gate. Marshall stood at the glass, long after the jet bridge door closed, watching the plane pull away from the terminal. He didn't feel lost anymore. For the first time in years, he knew exactly where he stood, rooted not in wealth, not in the past, but in love chosen and rechosen. As the plane lifted into the morning light, he unfolded the paper airplane Ella had given him. On the wing, in her careful handwriting, were the words, "Love doesn't fly away. It lands where it belongs." He smiled, folded it gently, and slipped it into his coat pocket, next to the compass. Then he turned, walked toward the exit, and stepped into the day with the steady heart of a man who had finally found home.